Hello everyone, welcome to my healer update for Horns of the Reach patch for The Elder Scrolls Online. I am pleased to say this patch is okay for the support roles and unfortunate for the magic DPS, but regardless, I'll be going over your options as a Trials healer for this patch. You might even pick up a few things about 4-man content. I'll be going over, as requested by a few of you, what the options are this patch in terms of food, gear, whatever. And we'll talk about things that have changed and mostly things about that haven't changed. So if you guys have any questions about some things I do not cover in this video about Templar or Warden healing for trials, let me know down in the comments below. Big thanks to @Flintlock16 from Sepetern Away for letting me record in his lovely home. If you would like me to record in your houses in the future for, new videos, please do let me know, again, in the comments section below with an @name, or just message me in game. Alright, so just to have it very simple, let's talk about the things that have changed from our transition to Horns of the Reach from the Morrowind patch previously. So there's 3 things that have changed for healers this patch. The first change was the buff to the Atronach stone. You get more magic recovery now, which is a factor in the next second change, which is the ability to have the freedom to choose. Well, you could go by step through last patch, but you were heavy attacking a lot more. But this patch, you have more freedom to choose by stat food max health plus max magicka, as opposed to more or less using Witchmother's Potent Brew as a default for sustain. And the third change is your max stats as a healer have significantly gotten a buff. Now, the third change came about somewhat because of the changes to how the 2-piece and 4-piece bonuses work on sets now. So if you're coming back to the game or haven't read patch notes yet for the Horns of the Reach, previously, for example, like on my spell power cure set, I will only get 900 some max magicka for the second and third piece bonuses. Now this patch, they slightly increased it to where I can get over 1090. So that's a nice buff to max stats for this patch. That's about it. Nothing has really changed for healing in Trials or healing in 4-man. It's for the new content for the DLC dungeons. It's like just learning the fights, and that's honestly what all healing is. Even tanking, somewhat, even DPSing, like, so you know when to drop ult, when to do what, to maximize how much DPS you get. But yeah, it's just nothing's really changed. It sounds redundant when you like look at my videos from Morrowind then to here. It's like, okay, so why is this video a little long? Because I want to basically show you guys a alternative build for using Mending on the healer for trials. So again, what hasn't changed? So spell power cure is still best in slot for healers. It's free weapon and spell damage for everyone in the group, 6 people including yourself. It's pretty much a must-have. I can't stress this enough. Some healers starting out ask me, hey, I'm like CP 700, can I use 5 Magnus, 5 Seducers? And I'm like, yeah, sure you can, but why not this? Why not more, in terms of buffs for the group? Why not make things go faster? Because who wants to be stuck in the trial for like an hour? Or 2 hours or 3 hours? I'm sure there are many progression groups that are for the first time, but this does help a lot with DPS, especially this patch. When magickas got shit on, they're gonna need all the help they can get. So the secondary sets have not changed either for the most part since Homestead. You still have one healer wearing Mending, which is great damage mitigation on trash and boss fights, allowing groups to get away with things they couldn't possibly before Mending came along into play, when healers were still wearing IA. The other secondary set you guys want to for sure have in the group on most fights, you don't need it for short fights, obviously, is Worm. So Worm Cult still gives you cost reduction. They did notch it down by 1% in the Morrowind patch, but honestly, it's not that big of a deal. The 4% cost reduction is still great, so you want to have Mending or Worm as secondary sets with SPC. Now, in my Magwarden healer build video, I mentioned another set that's useful in like very short boss fights like the Archcustodian, maybe even Rucko 2 on Hell Raw Citadel, but it's Master Architect, so it's basically a set where you use an ultimate as a healer, most likely a Warhorn, to give two people closest to you Major Slayer, so they do 15% more damage and it helps to burn on the boss. So these are honestly really the three sets you should be looking at this patch as a healer: Master Architect, Worm Cult, and Mending. The only time you'll wear 5-piece Infallible Aether as a healer is for bosses that cannot be off-balanced, like the Storm Atronach in Ethereal Archive, the Foundation Stone Atronach in Ethereal Archive, and that's mostly about it, except I think you'll get a Rukdun on the bottom boss fight in Hellra, where if you're gonna bring like 4 melee stam DPS, you will need Infallible Aether to set them off balance since there's no Sork nearby. Even if you're running Lightning Wall as a healer, very low chance of actually concussing it to proc the off balance on target. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Master Architect, Worm Cult, IA, Mending, SPC. I'll be going over my own little alternative build for healers and mending. That is actually the main focus of why I am making a video, besides answering people's questions on what's good this patch. So before we go into that, let's go quickly over the skills. On a Templar healer, it's basically the same thing. You have the option of running shards or orbs or both, since orbs and shards share synergies now. Synergy cooldowns, I mean. So you can do both, you can do one or the other. I would prefer the shard because it's easier to get synergy as a DPS or tank from the shard. And the cost of the energy orbs compared to the shard, which also gives you back resources when someone synergizes it, is very enticing. The second skill I'll talk about is Channel Focus. Still a great skill. Fucking gives you Major Ward, Major Resolve, Sustain, Minor Mending, constant Minor Mending as you can see on the screen. Yeah, like, it's free as well, essentially, and why not use it? Lightning Wall, this is a subject of debate at the moment. I don't think it might be necessary, depending on how things go. I'm planning to test something pretty soon with the charge staff on Sork DPS, so theoretically if you only need maybe 1 or at most 3 Sorks to run a charge to Lightning Wall or something to get a very high uptime on Minor Vuln and off balance, do you really need healers to run it? So this is kind of iffy at the moment. If you don't have any Stamplar or Magplars in group as EPS, you can switch this out with Reflective Light for the minor sorcery buff that comes from Illuminate, so it gives you 5% more spell damage to you and the group. Ritual of Retribution, this can be swapped out with Orbs or Harness, useful in trash pulls or very passive boss fights can be to help your SPC uptime, but it's not truly necessary. You can still heal just fine without it. Ellie Drain, of course, you need Major Breach and whatever. Healing Springs, you'll still want to go Healing Springs. You can... if you go Witchmartyr's Potent Brew still on your healer, you can probably get away with the other morph, Illustrious Heals, this patch. So you can try it out if you want, but I would still get the Healing Springs, because sometimes it still gets rough for me in things like Mahar mode or even Sanctum. Inner Light, of course, when you can. if you really need a slot for a different skill, swap this out. Gives you max magicka and a passives while you have it slotted. Combat prayer, good old combat prayer. Don't need to say anything about it. Breath of life, your emergency heal. They still haven't fixed this. Fuck me. Like, you're supposed to direct this at someone with your reticle, sorry. But it's still like 360-degree heal, and I think you can still pass through walls now. So that's yeah. Efficient purge, situational. I know some healers still just passively slotted because they don't use harness for the most part. So they want the 10% magic recovery from it to help their sustain from the support passive magic aid. So this patch I'm going Warhorn on one bar and Nova on the other bar if it's SO, but otherwise I'll keep it Shooting Star. So according to the Mages Guild passive, I get 2% more max magic and recovery for each Mages Guild ability slotted. So on my Resto staff bar, Inner Light and Shooting Star will give me more max magic and magic recovery. Now when should you swap this out for something like Barrier? I'm aware that some EU healers and NA healers slot Barrier for the passive, for the 10% passive. But honestly, I would only use this in like very long fights, like Assembly General in Halls of Fabrication, or boss fights like the first boss, the 100 killers, if you really need a magic recovery to keep purging. But otherwise, you should be mostly managing your resources rather than constantly spamming things anyway. And that's pretty much it for skills. Trait wise, I am going to go all divines, and let me just get right into the build I have in mind for mending healers. So I have decided to go 6 pieces light on body and 1 piece heavy on slot, as you can see. This is because unlike Worm Cult, which I will show you here, you need to have it on 2 body pieces and jewelry rather than like you can't just swap worm to no worm on weapons. You can try doing worm staves on both bars, but there are better options and there's easier ways to just get the items you need. Like if you want to farm worm staves, go for it, but the traits will be lacking probably from RNG. You can just craft a death slot Destro. You don't even need a Master's Resto. But the Master Resto is nice for the stamina gives back in stamina intensive fights, like again Halls of Fabrication or maybe AA hard mode, who knows. But yeah, Worm Cult, I'm still going 7 light, and that's pretty much it. So for mending healing though, I feel like you can definitely get away with it easier, especially with this setup. So you get 1 heavy, 5 light, you're gonna get 1 piece Domihaus. So this is one of the new monster helm sets that came out. While the 2-piece bonus is definitely a interesting thing to try out for maybe ranged DPS. The 1 piece kind of enticed me into like trying it out, and so far it's actually pretty good. I'm very pleasantly surprised by it. It's a noticeable difference in not just stats, but sustain. So like, if you can see why, let me see. So it says it gives you max stam, max magicka, and it's 1,000. It's over 1,000 max stam, max magicka on the first piece bonus, which is insane. That's like 2 prismatic glyphs on just 1 piece of gear. So usually with Infused, prismatic glyphs give 500 some health and 400 max stam, 400-ish max magicka. But with this, with just the 1 piece bonus, it gives you 2 of those prismatic glyphs, plus if you slap an enchantment on it, a max health enchantment, it gives you even more than the prismatic health glyph would anyway. So this would help with your health. Everything else is max magic enchantment. And again, all divines and the Atronach stone will be used, so it gives me magic recovery a lot. And mending on jewelry, so you get magic recovery here, magic recovery here, and cost reduction here. Some people do prefer all recovery, but honestly, I found more sustain with 1 cost reduction and 2 magic recovery. But again, this depends on how you set up your max stats, since there are different ways to set up your healer in terms of max stats. Do you want to try out more spell damage? Do you want to try out just more recovery? I don't know, it's up to you guys, but this is what I have. This is what has worked best for me so far, and it's pretty fun. The Destro staff bar dispatch will probably go Infused, or depending on the results of the test this weekend, I'm planning to do Charged, which I don't think Charged is still good for a healer, but again, I think Infused is probably the best, since the Infused trait did get a buff this patch, so you can probably put Crushing or Weakening here. Just as a reference, Weakening does the same thing as Mending, pretty much. It, whoops. So you have the options, you have Crushing, but the tanks should be able to keep this up, especially with 5-piece Torx packed, by at least, I hope, 75% on the boss. So you probably won't need that as a healer. The other thing is Weakening. You can weave with your skills on the Destro staff, and you'll definitely get the Weakening lift to fire off. Some people thought this was bugged, but it's actually not bugged. It does work on the boss, it does work on NPCs, whatever. And this is basically like a second Mending. If you compare the stats of this to like the Mending, it's only a difference of maybe barely 90 in terms of numbers. So yeah, probably Infuse this patch, guys. Decisive is still good if you want to generate more ulti, but otherwise, Infuse is probably the way to go on the healer, on the Destro staff bar, and on the Resto staff bar. A lot of people, like when the patch notes came out initially, they were like, "Oh man, defending's gonna get a nerf. It's worthless now on healers. It's worthless now on tanks." I do agree that it's worthless now on tanks, considering tanks need one-handers for the most part for sword and board. I don't think 1000 some resistance is worth it on the tank. I'd rather go double infused on the tank, but I regress. I digress, I mean, sorry, I guess I did regress. I don't know, but anyway, rest of stuff of Mending, defending, this is kind of RNG if you want to farm it, but if you want to farm it, go for it. I would definitely do normal AA for this, since Mending Eternal Yokota or Immortal Yokota drops mostly on normal AA. It does not drop as often on bad AA. So yeah, for this, still go defending. So compared to last patch, before they nerfed defending, you're only missing about, honestly, maybe 3 to 4% damage mitigation. You're still getting 3 percentage damage mitigation from 2752. So 1% mitigation is 650. So you can do the math yourself. But honestly, with 1 heavy, considering the comparison of the resistances between the light hat and the heavy hat, you're gonna get with this build the resistances you had last patch, along with the heavy armor passives that come into play. I know it's not much, but it still helps. And you got 10 more CP this patch too, honestly, so if you really need the resistance, you can go more spell shield, you can go more like armor focus. Other than that, it's no big deal. Defending, I think, is still best in slot for healers on the Resto stuff. You can go Infused if you want, but I don't see the point. I'd rather live. That's always been the theme of my healing setups ever since I did progression runs in VMO hard mode a long time ago. Just dying made me feel like shit. And I think, if you die as a healer, it's worse than dying as a DPS, because not only are you losing DPS when a person has to res you, typically a DPS, but you're losing out on buffs, you're losing out on debuffs, you're losing out on sustain. So it's kinda shit. I'd rather live. I'd rather have more health than Magicka, if I have to be completely honest, but this patch you don't really have to have too much health, if you like, but I would definitely still recommend at least 18 to 18.5k health. 90k health is safe for sure, it's a sweet spot. But yeah, let's go over the stats real quick before we move on to the Warden healer. So on the Resto bar, with all the buffs, Inner Light and Shooting Star, you have 41.4k max Magicka, you have 64 attribute points in Magicka. You can change this. You can put another 3 points in the health if you want for 18.4k health or something like that. But otherwise, you can go 64 points in the max Magicka with this build. You have 1 piece heavy, helps with the Untaunted passive, gives you more max health. You slap a health enchantment on there, more resistance, cool. And you can go all magic enchantments, 2 cost, 2 recovery, 1 cost reduction. So again, it's pretty straightforward this patch with this mending build with 64 points in the max Magicka. If you have questions about what it will look like with a Worm Cult on or Master Architect, I can show you guys in the comments below, or just tell you later. But yeah, this is roughly the stats you want to aim for with this build. With a Horn Up and Ebon nearby, you will definitely be hitting over 20k health most of the time. And as you can see, the max stam has significantly increased, so with Worm Called On or with just 7 light, I have roughly around 9.2, 9.7k max stam, which is fine. Like, you don't need much max stam as a healer, but it does help when you have to like break free or whatever. And I'd rather have that, especially in Halls of Fabrication. The magic recovery, some of you will note, is a bit low on the Destro staff bar, but again, you're not going to stay on your Destro staff bar for too long. You're going to have magic recovery at around 2400, 2300, depending on what you equip. So like if you had a, let's say, I don't know, harness on, and you only have one Alliance War support skill, you only have about 2269, so close to 2300. But if when you pop a spell power pot, you have around this much, and 2400 is enough. Even last patch it was enough for the most part. I've been talking to some healers that say, you know, hey, you know, I still like Witchmare's Spell and Brew, whatever, and I'm getting 3000 or 3200 or something ridiculous magic recovery, and as I found out, as you guys know, over 2700 magic recovery I don't think is necessary. I think it's kind of whatever at that point. So play around it with yourself if you guys want, for sure. And for the resistance buffs, this is what it is. Spell resistance is around here. Physical resistance is around here. You can literally just stand in a warrior's cleave and not die as a healer still. I mean, like the... Alright. So this is the mending build I have made. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and on to the Warden healing. Alright, before we end the video, I'm just going to very briefly go over the Magical Warden healer. So after some testing, successes, failures, I think it's still good and comparable to Templar for Sanctum Ophidia, Hellra Citadel, Halls of Fabrication, basic non-hormone Maw. I haven't really had much success or tries yet with Maw Hard Moon on the Warden healer. It's doable on AA Hard Moon for sure, once you get used to the range of the fungal growth. And that's pretty much it. So same skills as always. You have Budding Seeds in the front bar for the timing heal. Your resistance buff that gives it to 5 other people as well. I guess Wall of Lightning if you want, or Harness. Since, again, as I mentioned before, it's still a matter of testing if Wall of Lightning is going to be just used by a few people rather than all ranged in both healers. One healer. Orbs for sure, no matter what on the Warden healer, because you only have like Budding Seed synergy, and Orbs don't really share synergy cooldowns like Templar Shards and Orbs do. Ellie Drained, Horn. The one key difference between the Warden healer and a Templar healer with my stat feed right now, I have Witchmare's Spell and Brew, and with a few adjustments to stat, you can make it exactly the same as a Templar healer, with slightly less magic recovery, since my race on the Warden healer is a Breton, not a High Elf. But anyway, it's pretty much the same exact stats, with the same exact gear. Just the skills are different. Max Magicka is very obviously higher once you slot Lord and Storm for the 8% Max Magicka increase. And that's about it. Nothing has changed, as I said before. One thing I forgot to go over in the Templar segment of the video was the enchantment on the Resto staff bar, which is weapon damage enchantment, which will bolster your spell damage and give you more heals or healing done. But honestly, even without it, you should be able to heal through most of the content in Vet Trials. It doesn't matter, honestly. I feel like what your max magic is after a certain point. I would say 35k max magic is just fine for healing whatever content you want. It's just about knowing the fight, whatever. But yeah, other than that, you probably want to go weapon spell damage. For the Berserker, most healers do not weave on their Resto staff bar when they're on it. They just straight up heal. And most of the enchantments that you can craft do not proc off of healing, or what healers usually just do. So this prismatic enchantment won't proc off of healing. Even weapon damage won't, you get a light attack for the uptime. Crushing won't, absorb health. Nothing, absolutely nothing here will proc off of your heals. Even poisons you might use, like Minor Breach, won't proc off of healing abilities, proc off of damage, or just basic attacks. So just keep that in mind when you're determining a enchantment for your Resto staff bar. And after some thinking, logically I just came to the conclusion that weapon damage is probably the best, since nothing else comparable or even like ideal on the Resto staff bar. So again, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for subscribing, watching, liking, unliking. Let me know if you guys have any questions again down in the comments. And again, thank you very much for all the support you guys have shown me. I'll see you in the game.